Hi, I'm Brooke Becker, the author of The Adventures of Sammy the Snowflake. This is a magical coming-of-age tale about change. Sammy and Sylvie, our two leading snowflakes, learn about the snowflake facts of life, which is pretty much about change, and they decide they want no part of that. Instead, they go on this fantastic journey across the cloud to find Mother Weather, because they figure if they can sit her down and convince her not to change, that they won't have to. During their long, daunting trek, they meet scary monsters, undergo some daring feats, and learn some pretty valuable life lessons. And I'd like to invite you to join me in reading Chapter 1. Sammy was a normal snowflake. He liked his life so far in the clouds, going to snowflake school, having snowflake friends. He was an only snowflake, no brothers or sisters in his family. His parents were normal snowflake parents. His father, Nigel, worked as a college professor, and his mother, Betty, worked part-time teaching ice sculpture. His best friend, Sylvie, loved adventure, and they were always getting into some kind of mischief. One day, Sammy came home from playing and overheard his parents' voices in the next room. Obviously, they hadn't heard him. "Well, I truly feel he's getting to the age to be told of the snowflake facts of life, Betty," his father said. "Oh, I know, dear," replied his mother, "but he's so young and so enjoying life. Couldn't we just wait a little bit longer? Oh, there's such innocence, such freedom in not knowing about the true life of a snowflake and what we really go through. Do you really think he's old enough to handle all of that information?" "Betty," Nigel replied, "I was younger than he is now when I was told. And thank goodness my parents told me when they did, because it wasn't long after that I fell with him into the unknown." "It's time, Betty, it's time." Betty nodded in agreement. Her only child was growing up, and he needed to know what life had in store for him. Sammy was on the stairs listening to his parents, his head reeling with questions. What did they mean by what life had in store for him? What was this falling into the unknown? He had heard some snowflakes at school talking about this, but he figured it was some kind of made-up stories that the older snowflakes told to the younger snowflakes in order to scare them. Sammy sat on the steps for a long time trying to figure this all out. What was he to do? He decided that first off, he needed to find out if this were really true. He would ask his best friend, Sylvie, to see if she knew what was going on. The next day he did, and she replied, "Oh, you mean your parents haven't told you yet?" she said. "Mine told me 6 months ago on my birthday. I didn't say anything to you because I figured you knew." "You knew on your birthday," Sammy said, "and you didn't tell me?" Snowflakes don't really have yearly birthdays. They are born, and they are acknowledged by the elders through elaborate rites of passage that honor certain qualities of maturity. Their progress through these stages depends on how many times they go through the cycle. More mature flakes have cycled innumerable times. Both Sammy and Sylvie are considered very young because they've not experienced the cycle even once. Actually, my parents haven't told me. I overheard them discussing it yesterday and decide what were they telling me, and I decided to ask you. So you're telling me it's all true? "So far as I know," said Sylvie. "I mean, this has been going on for as long as recorded snowflake history, and probably even before that." Sammy became depressed. His whole world started to cave in. Everything he had ever known, everything, was going to change. And Sammy wasn't one to like change. He liked things just the way they were. He liked his home, his parents, his school, his friends. He loved his life, and he sure as heck didn't want it to change. It all got confirmed that night when the parents sat him down after dinner to have the talk. They told him of the fall into the unknown, usually propelled by wind, whatever that was. They said snowflakes often fell together in a group Perhaps they thought that that would comfort him to hear that. But sometimes it didn't happen that way they planned due to weather. What was this weather? In fact, both of his parents kept talking about that word, weather. All Sammy could grasp was that it was something that changed a lot, and it directly affected his status as a snowflake. He decided he didn't like weather. His parents went on to say that Sammy would remain intact as a snowflake until weather, there it was again, warmed up. Then he would change and melt into something called water. His beautiful frozen crystalline body would no longer be. He would remain this watery substance until weather caused him to change again into vapor. Invisible, no less. Oh, no, 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 Sammy thought. This is getting worse by the minute. He will become invisible, no one will see him, and he won't be able to see anyone else. This was way too much information for him to handle. As his mind seemed bursting with all these new concepts, he remotely heard his parents say something about the cycle ending, yet beginning again with him changing into yet another snowflake. I don't understand, said a very confused Sammy. What is this melting? What is change? Am I going to die? No, 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 Sammy. You're not dying, his father consoled him. You're simply going through a metamorphosis that we all go through. Look, your mother and I have gone through this dozens of times, and we're still here. We haven't died. Sammy excused himself and went to his room. It seemed that this thing called weather was the culprit of all his woes. Maybe if he could change this fickle weather's mind, maybe if he could stop changing and remain the same, then he would remain the same. The trick was how to find weather. He thought about this and decided that the only flakes who would know would be the great and wise snowflake elders at the hidden crystalline monastery. Folklore states that the monastery appears and disappears according to need. Those with heartfelt intentions will have an audience with the elders, who know all there is, was, and will be.